Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to another amazing podcast episode. Now, today is going to be so good because, as you can see from the title, we are talking about the power of taking the lesson, but also taking the shot. And I kind of talk about this energy a lot on the podcast, but today I have an amazing guest. Mr. Bobby, and he is going to tell you all about his life experiences and how, from his perspective, it's going to be so important that you take those shots in life. Bobby, how are you today?
I am good. I'm excited for this discussion. I'm excited to be on the show.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here. What I'm most excited to talk about is the moment you knew that law in the way that you knew it, that it wasn't quite it. So, from our previous conversation, you've already let me know that you've spent years helping other people clean up their legal messes. And now I'm curious, was there a particular time, a case, a client, a moment that kept you up at night, right? That made you realize that you needed to start helping people before things went wrong versus after?
Well, so there wasn't a particular case because, quite honestly, what I kept having happen was people would come to me after things had gone wrong,
Mhm.
and basically had to tell them there wasn't much I could do to help them at that point because literally it was going to cost them more to pay me my fees than to just pay the other side whatever they had to pay them to make the problem go away. And that was kind of this repeated issue that I saw come up over and over again. It happened in various instances. I mean, there was one case where people came to me because they had kind of created a business, and there was someone who was suing them claiming to be a co-owner. And they were like, but he's not a co-owner. And I said, well, do you have a written agreement with him? They said, no. I said, well, do you have a written agreement with each other? They said, no. And I mean, it was a situation where they had let him hold himself out as part of the founding team of this business and all this. And I just said, I don't know what I can do for you at this point. And things like that came up over and over again. I would have people come to me with issues where they had gotten a cease and desist letter of some sort or another, and I just had to say, you kind of messed up. And so there's not much I can help you with here. So it wasn't a moment, it was this constant kind of situation or sets of situations where people came to me and I couldn't help them. That was bothersome for me. And really, it was kind of at the same time, I was getting a bit burnt out with what I was doing in my legal practice. I picked probably the worst type of legal practice for me personally. I am not someone who loves conflict. I love intellectual conflict, if you will. I like having debates about things. I like diving into complicated legal issues and legal questions. But I found myself fighting with opposing lawyers about everything and about some of the stupidest things in life. Literally, I had to fly down to West Palm Beach, Florida twice in a case to get the opposing lawyers to give me legible copies of Xeroxes, like because literally the Xeroxes were like turning as it was making a copy, and so I couldn't
Oh,
read it.
wow.
Yeah, and I had to go down for a mediation and then a hearing before a judge for the judge to look at the other side and say, "Give him legible copies."
Come on
But but
now.
but I mean, this was the kind of stuff I was having to spend my life fighting about, and so those things were just eating at me. And I was working with a life coach about my relationship with my wife and a bunch of other things. And after we've been working together about 6 years, at this point I was running my own law firm, and she said, "Do you like what you do for a living?" And I stammered. And kind of for the first time in my life, I admitted to someone that I didn't. And that was the start of me kind of taking a very different path and going my own way of building an online business and starting that. And then that became my business in place of my law firm and my legal practice.
That's so powerful because it goes to show that life is going to give us so many lessons, right? I bet when you first were in law school, law seems something that's so like masculine, set forth, is what it is. Like very little fluctuation. If there is fluctuation, then you got to use this law that's gonna, help you with the fluctuation of the first one. And so you sharing your experiences is kind of allowing me, and I know the listeners, to have an understanding that even in such a like a strenuous experience or career, I bet you wasn't thinking about a lot of these things could happen, or that you would see a lot of this when you first were practicing law, but then now you started getting all these lessons that like help shape and mold who you become.
Yeah, I mean, law school does not prepare you to be a lawyer in any way, shape, or form. It prepares you to think about legal problems, and that's about all it does.
Hmm.
But being a lawyer involves so many other things. I mean, sometimes you work at a big law firm, or you work at a law firm, and that can kind of shield you from some of these things. But
Hmm.
eventually you start to have to realize and recognize, well, if I'm going to build a business as a lawyer, I got to build a business.
Mm.
And I like to say that lawyers are some of the worst marketers in the world. They miss some of the most important things. So to lawyers, marketing is talking to other lawyers, it's writing articles for other lawyers, it's doing that kind of stuff. It's not talking to your clients or potential clients. I mean,
Mm.
I guess in a sense it works for lawyers who represent big companies, because the big companies, basically the client is the lawyer who works for that big company. But for most situations, I mean, you're not talking to your clients, and it's just a very weird thing to do. So I had to learn a lot of these skills. And when I launched my own law firm, I mean, I made all kinds of mistakes that entrepreneurs make. I didn't niche. Like, I would basically say, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do this other thing. And it was because I was scared, because I was like, okay, well, how am I going to get enough business to make a good enough living? So like a lot of people do, you think, oh, well, if I just cast a really wide net, it's going to work. But I remember a couple of moments there where like lawyers I knew who I'd been friends with for over a decade said, so what are you doing again now? Because they wanted to understand who were people that they could refer to me. And they didn't, because I was trying to say I did all of these different things. And so, I mean, I kind of eventually said, I get it. As part of my law practice, I actually wrote an Amazon best-selling book about patent litigation eventually, when I started to really kind of niche down and figure out, hey, I got to be a specialist at something. But it took me a while to figure those things out, because none of that was within my wheelhouse. I was someone who just loved, I was drawn to the law by the concept of these issues, these debates. I started studying constitutional theory and constitutional law when I was in high school. And so it was just like, I liked it almost at an intellectual level
Yes.
more than at a what would practicing actually look like.
Yeah, that makes sense when you really think about it. Because again, it's so complex, but it's you're letting me know there's emotions
Yep.
involved, right?
Yep.
And so I remember one of the things that we talked about was agreements, right?
Yep.
And we kind of touched on it a little bit in reference to the contracts. So can you share a story with our audience from your early days in your law career, where maybe there was some missing information, or a time where maybe you felt misunderstood in reference to an agreement? And you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but kind of like you dive deep with the story to let
Yep.
the audience know how in depth those agreements can get. Because I've even seen on like some lawyer shows where they're like, you could just write down the agreement on a napkin,
Yep.
and that like holds some weight versus not having any agreement because it's maybe with your family member or a friend.
Yep. Well, so my law career, I'll be honest, I never anticipated starting my own law firm. I never anticipated running my own business, quite honestly. I got out of law school and I went a very traditional path of, I worked for a judge for a year. Then I worked for some prestigious law firms in the Washington, D.C. area. I was doing that. Then I went and became a federal prosecutor, because in the strata that I was with among lawyers, that was really the only way I was going to get the hands-on experience of actually getting to stand up in court to argue, because I was working at firms where the cases that we were fighting about were often hundreds of millions of dollars. So if you're a big company, you're not going to let someone who's never argued in court argue in court for you. Obviously, you're not going to. So, I mean, you have to go somewhere else. So I went and became a prosecutor and did that for 3 years. And I was coming out of that and trying to figure out what to do. I could have gone back to the same firm where I was, but I don't even know how I found it. I found these two guys who were running a firm in Washington, D.C., where I was going back to, where I'm still in the area now, but they were doing a very entrepreneurial thing. And it interested me. And I interviewed with them, I met with them, and effectively their firm, they were bringing the mentality, the skills of these big firm lawyers who normally represent the defendant in a case to the plaintiff side. And they were doing it sometimes for companies, sometimes for other people, but it was a plaintiff side firm that most of the work was on contingency fee. So you only make money if you win. And the cases that the firm handled were bigger. So they weren't, those types of firms that do contingency, normally what they have is they have volume. So you always have some cases coming, you always have some settlements coming through, so you always have money. Well, this firm didn't work that way, but it sounded like fun. I had some money saved up, so I could afford to take a risk. And so I did. And we kind of had like a letter that said I was entitled to make a salary of X, but I understood that I wasn't guaranteed that, because of cash flow, but that they would make it up as money came out. But that was literally the extent of the agreement. But we didn't talk about or address, well, when would I actually be able to become a partner in the firm? And at a big law firm, at an established law firm, that's not really a big deal because you're getting paid every week or all the time. So you don't care. So, hey, that's not a risk. But when you join a place like this, that is an important consideration because this firm had a lot of cases that were really big. So theoretically, they could have gotten one or two big judgments and the two of them are like, I'm done. I don't need to practice anymore. I got all the money I need. So, and I wasn't guaranteed anything. So I didn't think about it. We didn't get anything in writing about that. Everything went fine for the first 3 years I was there. I mean, they treated me fairly. There were periods I'd go 6 months without getting paid, but then we'd have some money come in and they treated me very fairly to the point that, and I won't get the numbers right exactly, but let's say I would get 30% and they would each get 35. So, I mean, it was almost a third and hey, that seemed great. But then my wife got pregnant and I said, hey, we need to actually put something in writing here. We need to have something down so that it's not, so we have a plan here because again, I'm saying I have all the downside risk, but I don't have any guaranteed upside. And we couldn't come to a resolution. And we started this conversation. I mean, my wife was probably, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe 6 months pregnant at the time. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but we didn't talk about it too much. Then my daughter was born in December. And so I'm out December into early January doing kind of paternity leave, if you will. And we started conversations again, and we never really got to a good resolution. It came to a head. I'll never forget. It was a snowy night. It was like a Sunday. We had a conference call, and it was a good thing it was a conference call, not in person. Because one of the guys said something where literally, if we'd been in the room together, I probably would have thrown my coffee mug at him. I mean, sitting here today, I don't even remember what that was. But I remember just being enraged at something he said, because the problem is once we got there, we're talking about trying to allocate things. And obviously that means, well, if he's taking more, it's by saying I'm not worth as much. And this was kind of the end that Saturday or Sunday night. I remember it was snowy outside, but I after I got off the call, I looked over at my wife and my brother-in-law who was at the house at the time. I said, we need to go to the office right now. I'm going to pick my stuff up. And literally I went that night, picked my stuff up, dropped off the stuff that I had at my house that was the firm, just because I knew that was kind of the end. And that's why I started my own law firm. On basically without a plan. I had one client who came with me. I was able to get some things, but it really created an issue. And that was one of those moments where I said, if we would have just had a written agreement at the beginning, this wouldn't have been a problem. And it became one of those things that I saw so many entrepreneurs do that I was trying to help them fix that along the way. And one of the things I always tell people is it's not just about the business side. It's not just about the money. One of those guys, one of the two partners in that firm, flew through Hurricane Sandy to get to the Bahamas in like a 10-person prop plane. It was the last plane that got there to be at my wedding. I haven't talked to him since March or April or whenever this event happened. I think it was March of 2014. I haven't talked to him since. So not doing these things destroys relationships. It's
Yes.
not just about money. It's not just about business. It can really put you and your relationships at risk, which is one of the things that I want to help people avoid.
Yeah, that's so powerful because it's not until the relationship is truly at risk. Because, like you said, when the beginning of it, before your wife got pregnant, you felt fair. It kind of
Yep.
does feel fair in the
Yep.
beginning, right? When you just
Yep.
lend that family member some money or you just take on that partnership for business. It doesn't normally feel rocky in the beginning. You might have a couple of gut feelings like, oh man, maybe I should address this. But I bet there are like fears that as a lawyer, when someone comes to partner with you in the beginning, that you can kind of help them address. You can give them that paperwork of how to kind of like, or that talk about how to bring that to the table and taking out feelings and emotions and making it more of like a, this kind of just is what it is type of thing.
Yep.
Because again, if it feels good in the beginning, they're compensating you. It's not until it's like, I tell my husband this too. Men get pregnant also, right? Like when the woman gets pregnant. So of
Yep.
course you're going to have more honest, more clear emotions because your family is expanding. So you have a higher level of responsibility. And
Yep.
so you were able to stand up more firm and say, hey, I can't just be lackadaisy with you guys anymore. And I bet that is the case for a lot of people when they get inside of a space where they say, oh, come on, River, come on. When they get inside of a space where they say, oh, that's Mr. Bobby. Say hello. Yes, yes. We just need you to relax. We just need you to relax right now, okay? Okay. All right. When they get inside of a space where they see it, they recognize, like, oh man, things felt good in the beginning. Now they just don't feel as good anymore. How do I have that conversation with my family member? How do I have that conversation with my business partner that I need more
Yep.
or I need clarity? I think that I'm gonna be honest with you, having a pre-conversation with you and then even having a conversation right now, it does make me think more because it's like you have to put your emotions aside.
Yep.
And you have to see it as like a business situation because then when it goes bad, now there's still emotions at play, but now those emotions can be more rage and anger. And maybe you're not thinking as logically, or you're hoping, like, I want this person to get jail time and I want them to go to prison. But it's like you said, sometimes your hands are more tied on the back end from the lawyer experience or the help that a person may think that they could get simply because the contract wasn't there in place.
Yeah. What I like to tell people is having a contract does two things. One, it can help you avoid a dispute in the first place.
Mm,
And two, it can help you resolve a dispute quickly, easily, and as painlessly as possible if one does arise. So, first of all, the big point of the first thing is helping you avoid disputes is number one, a lot of times people don't have what we lawyers we like to put fancy words for things would call a meeting of the minds. In other words, they're actually not in agreement
mhm.
because they didn't talk about the important terms and all the stuff that actually needs to be agreed to in a contract. And so the people are coming into it and have different perspectives on what you're actually agreeing to. Because
Right,
if it's just kind of a handshake deal and you don't take the time to say, okay, well, hey, what are the contours? What are we agreeing to? What are you agreeing to do? What am I agreeing to do? And are there any conditions? And if we don't, in like a partnership or business partnership, it's like, okay, well, what happens if a year from now I don't want to do this anymore? Or what happens if I start getting drunk all the time and don't do my work? I
yep,
mean, you have to
yep.
deal with all of those things. And by the way, dealing with those things is always easy when you're clear minded and nobody's drunk and nobody is misbehaving. But
Right,
once someone starts, it's hard to have those conversations, right? So that's kind of part of why you want to do this up front. Avoid the disputes in the first place.
yeah,
Second thing, even if you actually did have full agreement at the beginning, but if you don't have it put down in writing, I will guarantee you 6 months from now, you and the other party are going to have different memories of what you agreed to.
yep.
And it's not It's not because either party is bad. You're both probably wrong to some extent. Human beings, and I've learned this, I learned this as a lawyer when I had to prep witnesses and do these things. Our brains don't work the way we think they do. We think we remember a lot more than we do. We
Yeah.
actually, as human beings, there's a lot of studies you can go into to understand this. We actually fill in blanks that aren't there. And,
Mm.
and a simple example I used to give people when I was preparing them for depositions is said, let's say you have a weekly meeting, a member or weekly leadership meeting at your company where the CEO, the CFO, and the general counsel are there to have a discussion every Monday at 11 o'clock. If someone says, who was at the meeting on September 19th? I don't know if that's a Monday, but let's just assume that was a
Right.
Monday. Your mind is going to say, well, me, I was the general counsel, the CEO, and the CFO. But guess what? Chances are I don't remember
Yeah, you probably wasn't
September
there
19th.
on that day. I can see what you mean.
I don't remember that specific meeting. My brain is just saying at our Monday meeting,
Right.
he was there. And so like that's a simple example where the proper answer to someone in that case would be, well, I don't know on that specific date, but normally here are the three people would be there, but I don't know on that date. Again, so that would be how I would prep witnesses. In the context of an agreement, what's going to happen is both sides are going to remember the agreement as more favorable to them. I, for example, might remember that you were supposed to pay me more, or you might believe that I was supposed to do more work. And
Right.
those types of things, it's just the way our brains work. So if you don't have a written agreement, what happens there when you have that dispute comes up? What's going to happen is either you're not going to be able to resolve the dispute, or
Mm.
you will. But what's going to happen is one side is going to feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. They're going to feel like they're giving up, even though they didn't. If you had a written agreement, which specifically spelled this out, this issue comes up 6 months later. What do? You go look at the contract.
Yep.
What does the contract say? And then whoever was wrong is like, oh, I was wrong. Okay. Problem solved. And no hurt feelings then, right? Because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I was wrong. And so it just makes it much simpler. And the other thing, and what I do like to joke with people is the real reason to have contracts is to get rid of that gray zone and get rid of this ambiguity because lawyers thrive in ambiguity. And
Yeah.
I like to say I'm a warm and cuddly lawyer, but most people don't want to have to spend a lot of time with lawyers.
Yeah.
And if you don't have agreements or you have agreements with a lot of ambiguities in there, that is a situation where lawyers might get involved and cause a lot of trouble. And we lawyers have a way of doing that. And so if you want to avoid lawyers, get agreements in place. It's kind of the advice I give people.
Yeah, I could see that. I was watching that movie. It's like a little cartoon movie with my son earlier, like the Bee movie.
Yep.
And the bee got upset and he said he's going to just sue the humans of the big companies that were producing honey. And the bee lawyer was saying, he said something along the lines of like, it's not about what they know, it's about what they don't know. And that's kind of what it sounds like you're saying is like when the contract will prevent that gray because then when you have the gray, it allows people to kind of go in with the don't know. Well,
Yep.
this wasn't in writing and this wasn't in writing. And so it kind of it's like you can't cover your own butt at that point, can you?
Yeah. And so, I mean, and again, a lot of people ask me why is legal language so stilted? Why are contracts? Why do you have paragraphs that are like, that big and one sentence that's like 19 lines long with about 18 parenthetical clauses? Well, it started simple. That language would have started with a very simple statement. And when the contract writers wrote a simple statement, again, I say this like just this types of language. And then what happens is lawyers who find ways to sued, found a loophole and won. And so then the contract writer said, let's close that loophole. So they add a new clause. Well, then another crafty lawyer in the next round says, I found another loophole and they win. And so that's what happens. And that's why,
Then
look,
book.
I don't like legalese. Let me be
Then
honest, because I have to read it, but there's a reason it's there. It's been crafted
right.
over time to kind of basically close all these different loopholes that people have found. And so that's why you'll have these clauses that do specific things that are often worded in a way that you're like, wait, let me read this, let me break this up and read it and make sure I understand it because it can be complicated, but it's done for a reason.
That's so powerful right there too, because now it makes me think about risk. There's so many, come on, River, please, baby, please, 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 leave. I'm leaving sleeping. I don't even know how we get up today. Now it makes me think about risk, right? Say risk. Risk. Yes, it makes me think about risk. And so the contract makes us feel safe, but then obviously the lack of contract makes us feel unsafe. So can you share with us how did you go from your law firm to online marketing, writing a book, leaving that practice with those two guys, merging from like federal prosecution, getting all the way over here to this realm now? Like, was that scary? What was your scariest moment? What did that transition look like?
So it's been scary at 90% of the time. That's probably not an accurate statement, but it's been scary a lot of the time. So, I left that firm. I picked myself up and I created my own law firm.
Okay.
And I had more time than clients. I mentioned I had one client who kind of came with me, and we resolved that case relatively early. It was a contingency fee, so it was kind of nice. I got a bit of cash. But so I was sitting there trying to figure out, well, how am I going to get clients?
Right.
And I mentioned before that lawyers are bad marketers. I know, because I started by saying, you know what, I'm going to buy all these books about marketing for lawyers. Threw those out because they were junk. I mean, they were just like so bad. So I was like, okay, well, let me just start looking at marketing generally. And oh, by the way, let me try to figure out a way that I can market from behind a computer screen where I don't have to talk to a lot of people, and I don't have to go to a
Right.
bunch of socials, and I don't have to, go to a bunch of events that I'm that guy who stands in the corner. If you talk to me, great, I'll talk to you, but I don't go introduce myself to people at
Mhm.
events. And so I found the world of online marketing for my law firm. Found HubSpot, which if listeners don't know, HubSpot is, I don't even know, like at the time, I don't even know what it was. It's software for doing a lot of different things, but they created this term. I don't know that they created the idea, but this concept of inbound marketing. You create content, it attracts people, you bring them into your world that way.
Mhm. Go get the
So
ball.
I started
You
learning
won.
that stuff for my law firm, and to figure out, well, how can I maybe get some clients? And I went through a ton of courses, a ton of training to understand that stuff way back then. And I mentioned I wrote this Amazon bestselling book about patent litigation. Well, it didn't start that I was going to write it as a book. It started I was going to create a pamphlet for people. And then it kind of kept going and kept going. And then it became this book that, to be clear, to be an Amazon bestseller in the niche of patent litigation doesn't take much. I sold more than 4 or 5 books, but it doesn't take many more than that to actually get a bestseller status there with that very hyper specific thing. But so I just started doing those things. And then I mentioned um, the life coach I was working with, and her getting to admit that I didn't really like my practice. This was 3 years
Mm.
later or so. And so she said during that call, she said, well, so what are we, like when I said I didn't like my business, she said, okay, well, what are we gonna do about that? To this day, I say life coaching. They won't let you just sit there and wallow. They make you actually come up with a solution.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't know. And she's the one who put the idea in my head. She said, well, I could see you going on radio and podcasts and talking about legal mistakes and legal things that business owners needed to do. So, that's interesting. And so we finished up that call. By the time I had my next call with her 2 weeks later, I had already signed up with a podcast booking agency. I mean, this was way back in 2017, I think. Yeah, 2017, the beginning of the year. And I had already started the process. And it was funny because for anyone who's seeing me now, I mean, I'm in a t-shirt. I wear t-shirt, jeans. In the summer, I'm wearing shorts, flip flops. I don't pretend I'm anything beyond that. But
Yeah.
back then, the headshot I gave to people was the classic lawyer
Yeah.
side look in a suit, with my arms crossed kind of thing. And it was just kind of funny, but I started doing it, and I started on that path then. And that year I kind of said, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And so I paid a lot of money for that agency to get me on a bunch of podcasts. I signed up for ClickFunnels way back then for the software to build stuff. And I paid extra to get access to their coaching, like people to help me build this stuff. And I did all of these things with the idea that I was going to create a course that was a course and templates for people, for business owners. But again, I still hadn't really learned the lessons, because I wasn't saying very specifically who I served. I said, well, I serve businesses. And maybe I said online, but I was thinking everything from software to tech to course creators to coach to all of it doesn't make sense, by the way. From there, those are very different things. Course creators, coaches, those kind of businesses, what I now think of as knowledge brands, make sense, but tech and software, those are very different issues that you're often dealing with, ownership and complex things. So, but I was going down this path, and I'll never forget. By the time I was doing this, I was preparing for a website or for a webinar. I was working through the process. I was on a trip for my 5-year anniversary. I remember like having the slides that like working through some drafts of the slides on that trip. And I was sure it was going to be great. And so November of 2017, I'm going into this. I had spent also, by the way, I don't know how much I paid total in ads, but probably $10,000, $15,000 in ads and the person running my ads to get people on my list, to get people to come to the webinar. And I was sure the webinar was going to be great. And I practiced the day before, recorded myself because I'd heard these things that you need to actually literally be at an 11. You have to have extra energy or you come off flat. So I recorded myself watching, hey, this is looking great. So then I do the webinar and I'm expecting I'm going to get off and then I'm going to go and look and I'm going to see a bunch of sales. I didn't. I had a week for people to buy and I made exactly one sale. After this year, I've dumped tens of thousands of dollars into all of this. And that woman, and again, I don't remember the price. I think it was 600 and something, random 628 or 629, some random amount. That woman asked for a refund on day 29 of a 30-day refund policy, never having even looked in the course. People always say, oh, that must have broken your heart. I say, no, I was kind of glad she did because quite honestly, you don't want to have one person. I was like, and I don't remember, maybe I'd built out everything. I don't remember exactly, but I was like, okay, well, this kind of gives me a different start. And so that was probably some of my low, but I kept going and I don't know, there was this thought, oh, you should just do weekly webinars. Well, the problem is unless you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars every week on ads, you're not going to get enough people there on these
Yeah.
webinars. So I was doing webinars for like 2 people and it's just, that is very hard to get an energy up for. But through that year, I continued. And I was kind of crestfallen at that point. I was like, I don't know if I want to keep going with this.
Yeah.
Maybe I just need to go back to being, just say, my lawyer, I'm a lawyer. That's what I'm doing and build up a legal practice again. But in early 2018, I just decided, I really don't like practicing law. So I want to give this a shot and I'm going to give it a last shot. And ironically, I signed up for 2 very different programs right around the same time. One of them was about how to create a high ticket program and sell it. And one of them was Marie Forleo's B School, which is about creating a very low touch type of program. And that I signed up through an affiliate, Amy Porterfield, which meant I got to be in her group and was doing those things. Well, the high ticket was, I like to say, was one of the dumbest things ever. I mean, as a lawyer, creating expensive stuff is not a problem. I mean, the whole thing I was trying to address and fix was legal stuff was too expensive for people to get fixed. I was trying to create a low cost solution. So I don't know why I thought this, but that was, I don't know, another $10,000 or something near that, probably down the drain. I don't remember, but it was not good. But the other program worked, and it worked because I changed my attitude and just said, you know what? I'm just going to be very helpful in this group. And I do have to give some credit. It wasn't my idea originally. In this, so Amy Porterfield's had a community of people who'd signed up for this program through her affiliate link. And there were almost 1,000 of us in that group. And they said, we're going to do an engagement award. Like we're going to do an award or prizes for the most engaged person. And I think I didn't hear the announcement until maybe midway through the first week. So I did not win the first week. But the second week, like they came on and they announced, and I said, everybody knows who won because literally I was there everywhere, just commenting, providing advice, providing all these things. And as you can imagine, there wasn't a lot of legal stuff. So I was just providing guidance about marketing, about all these things I'd learned over the years.
Right.
And it brought my attention. And the funny thing was, I don't remember, there was a few different options you had for like what you could use as your prize. I think one of them was like you could have a light kid. And one of them was you could have an hour one-on-one with Amy.
Oh, I know I would have went for that one for sure.
Right. The person who won it the first week didn't go for that. So I did. And I said, but I asked, can I have her come on my podcast? Which at the time was getting like 20 downloads a week, maybe, but she agreed. And so she came onto my podcast. And, so I then built up this relationship with her. And because I was being active and being so helpful in the group, she noticed me. And this was also 2018 GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation over in the EU was going into effect. It's a very complicated law. The training on it was horrible to the point that it made me want to beat my head against the wall when I would watch trainings. I'm like, how is a business person, not a lawyer, supposed to understand this? So I decided I was going to go ahead and create some training about it for the community that I was starting to build. It was kind of not big, but I was starting to build. So I'm working on that training. And then literally, I don't remember, I think I got an email from Amy, and it was like Amy's email address, but I just assumed it was a
Like a
mass email.
newsletter. Yeah, yeah.
And I opened it and it was directly to me. And she was wondering if I could create a legal training for her next course she was going to create and like do this as part of it. I'm, so I run downstairs, yell this to my wife. It's like, huh, what? Because she's not in this world. She's kind of confused about the whole situation. And then I come back up to my office again. At this point, I've made less than $1,000 total online. So I very calmly said, okay, don't be, don't be desperate here. Be cool. Be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah.
So I start typing up my answer to her. And my answer was, yeah, I'd love to. It'd be great. Basically what happened, she had noticed me being so active in this group is why she was doing this. She knew my specialty. And so I said, yeah, I would. But I said, but I don't know if you know, I'm working on a GDPR training for my community and, blah, blah, blah. And I said something like that. So I said, so, but I'm sure we can find a way to make this work and to figure out timing. So I send that response. And then like literally less than 2 minutes later, I get a response right back. I'm like, whoa. And she's like, great. Hold it. Wait, what? What are you doing about GDPR? How much is it? I'll pay. I was like, no, I'm doing it for free. She's like, wait, what? She was so confused because most lawyers at the time were using the GDPR as a reason to get people to pay them $97, just for a training. They were charging people to come to a training to learn this stuff. And I was just saying, no, I mean, I'm doing this because I had to figure it out. And so I did it. So she was so stunned by that. She then immediately rushes, gets me on her podcast um, to talk about it. Now, ironically, I've been on her podcast twice, neither of which has an actual episode number. They were both bonus episodes, but fine. I don't really care. I got to be on her twice. And once was to talk about GDPR. And we did this, and she released the episode. I think it was on like April 30th. I had a launch webinar for I decided I'd set this on May 1st or May 2nd. We didn't plan this out. I had set that, and then she independently set it. And at the same time, she made an exception. At that point, she didn't link out to other people's sites, to freebies or anything. But she did in my case, because she said, this stuff you're doing is too valuable because I was giving away 3 hours of training for free. And so my email list went from under 1,000 to like 5,000 people in a matter of a week. Right around the time that I'm launching a product, right around the time that I'm doing all these things. And that May, I don't remember the exact number. If I give it an exact number, I'll be wrong, but I think it was like a $50,000 to $70,000 month. Like I'd gone from, I'd made less than 5,000 or less than 1,000 total, I think, to 5,000 to 50,000, 70,000, something like that in 1 month.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe this works. And, maybe this notion of being helpful and being there and simply saying, you know what, I'm going to serve first and I'm going to trust that everything will work out is a way to go. And that's kind of the path that I've been on since.
Yeah. I think that is that story that you just shared, I feel like it's a great, not directly, I want to say ending to the podcast because we aren't quite over, but that is such a powerful piece because it ties to the title of take the lesson, but take the shot. You had that lesson of saying serve, give. And even though you knew your expertise was in the legal realm, when you saw posts that maybe someone wasn't even asking about legal, even if you had an inclination of an answer, you gave. And I think sometimes in business, people only want to give if they can guarantee the monetary gain immediately. Even the more, we live in an instant gratification realm right now where people are literally like, I gave you that advice, I'm going to invoice you $1,000. Now,
Yep. Yep.
sometimes when I help people, I do like, especially if it's like a light conversation like we're having now, I may joke around and be like, all
Yep.
right, I just gave you some confidence, coach. I'm going to invoice you, but never actually do it because it's just a
Right.
joke. But it's the energy of giving and servitude within the entrepreneurship realm that we get repaid in ways that it's like your mind will get blown at the way you will be recompensated. And then I want to circle back around on two of how you said you didn't go to Amy in the sense of, I'm a lawyer. She's going to be the one to like let me help her. I know more than she knows. I can see all of these flaws in her business, so I need to go. You just went under the energy of learning and being a student. And then from that energy, you were noticed. And I think that is another part that our listeners have to know and remember. You can get so much gain from simply being noticed as a helpful person and as a giver. That will get you somewhere more than having like 100,000 likes on your social media post, right? Because you can have that, but you can buy that, but you can't buy authenticity of all
Yep.
these people being able to say, wow, Bobby is so helpful. Wow, Breyel is so helpful. Like that comes from the heart and from the soul. And the, like I said, the repayment on that, $1,000 to a 50,000. What?
Well, but it goes beyond that because what I can tell you is so that was 2018, May of 2018, but really it was I was being helpful, and I think it was like February through April is kind of the period where it was really this I was just serving. People I met through that community, by the way, are still some of my biggest cheerleaders online who will tell everybody go buy from Bobby stuff. So think about that. We are now 7 years removed from that, more than 7 years, but those are some of my ultra supporters because they've seen me do that. So I get
Wow.
word of mouth. I get things. I get people today who buy from me who they talk to me and they're like, yeah, I've known you since I've known of you since the Amy Porterfield days back in 2018, 2019. So literally, I tell people, you don't know how this is going to work, but you plant those seeds and they
Yes.
tend to sprout it. And the funny thing is, I mentioned earlier how I'm the guy in the corner at events and all these things. Well, fast forward, this was kind of May was my first month. And then September of that same year, there was a live event that Amy was putting on that was like, I got a free ticket to because of this, but it's out in San Diego. And I was like, I'm saying to my, I don't know. And she's like, go. I said, okay. So I go. I was literally a superstar because everybody knew me because I'd been so helpful in the
Wow.
group that I didn't like it was by far the best event I've ever been to because I didn't have to go introduce myself to anybody. They came to me and we just chatted and we were able to do those things. And I mean, there was like an event at some point where, Amy was speaking and she like jokingly says to people, I think Bobby may be in the house too. Like literally, like that was kind of the level that it had gotten to
Yeah.
because I had just been a nice guy, which I guess is like those things. And it's one of those things I say to people, you know what? At the end of the day, what a lot of people forget is just be a good person in
Yes.
business, and somehow that will set you aside or set you apart, which is so weird, but it's true.
Yeah.
And it's a lesson that I have kept with me. I literally was doing some customer support for my business now. I don't know, earlier this week, a woman who has been like thinking about maybe using my services or buying from me for like 3 or 4 years now. And I think she's finally going to. And I wasn't pushing her. I was just answering her questions. And it's just that attitude of treating people like people and treat people like you'd want to be treated. And
Yeah.
and I think life will work out pretty good for you.
Yes, I love that. And I can even share a recent story with you as well. So, back in June of this year, I hosted workshops here in Savannah, confidence building workshops.
Mhm.
And so, before last February, I was doing a workshop at the library, and then for some strange reason, the library started saying like they wanted these insurance documentations for your business and all type of weird stuff. So I'm like, insurance on a coaching business? Like, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about. But I just kind of like let it be because I said, okay, I'm not gonna overwhelm myself. I'm just gonna be at ease. And so I kept having the thought inside of my mind, go extra property manager, go extra property manager. But I still didn't quite do it yet. And so then I was texting one of my clients and I was like, I should go ask my property manager, can I use the building? And so she was like, you should. So I literally stopped texting her, got dressed, went and talked to my property manager. And she was like, oh my gosh, of course. Not only will I let you use the property, but I'll also sponsor all of your events for you. And so you can get the building and I'll pay. So I was like, now this is getting really good, Breyel. So let's keep going. And so in the midst of that, to what you were saying about servitude, I knew that I wanted to monetize, but at the same time, too, I was like, okay, Breyel, we're just kind of getting here in Savannah. We kind of haven't marketed the right way here. So let's just let the events be free and see who and how we get and kind of work it from there. So, Bobby, I promise you, I started working the events February, March, April, May. So, my birthday was in June. And so, I did an event, and my property manager, our pool was down. So, I partnered with another one of our properties, but in the same complex. Met a young lady she was a leasing agent at that complex. And she was saying, oh my gosh, I just love you so much, Breyel. I need help with my confidence. She's like, but I can't afford to be inside your program right now. And I was like, don't worry about it, right? Like, I'll still call you once a month and I'll still, text you and we'll still just work on it, right? So we would just talk and more so build like a personal relationship before ever really diving into like the professional piece of it, right? And so July came, August came, and then September came around the corner and she was like, I think I'm ready. I think I have the confidence to go talk to my property manager about being in your program. Well, I've been back to my property manager, and my property manager like, well, we have leadership budgets. So technically she doesn't even have to pay for it. She can just go talk to her property manager and have the company pay for it. And so I prepped her on that and just helped her get the confidence for that. And now she is inside of my program, but it's being paid for by the organization. But here's what tops it off. Just last week, to what you said about being of servitude, the regional manager for all of Georgia and all of South Carolina called my property manager the other day and said, I'm just curious. Do you know if Breyel would love to be a part-time leasing agent? I'm just curious to see if she wants to get in the company this way. And it goes to show exactly what you were saying. Just because I'm in service and giving and willing to pour, not only am I being compensated by the complex through my business, they even want to hire me. And so then my client is even telling the property manager, like, we need to get Breyel in to teach workshops and leadership development and all of these things. And so, of course, I'm seeing it like, this is just a simple segue. How you said that you joined Amy's program and got in there and was of service. I could be a part-time leasing agent. This isn't my forever, but it'll be something else even the more to get me through the door, see more of what the company needs. And then I'm the person hosting regional workshops and things of that nature. So I hope from both of our stories that our listeners can see, again, you got to take the lesson, but you gotta take the shot because the repay that we've both been getting on our shots have just been like three-pointers from like what is it, the halfway line or whatever you call it.
Yeah, well, and again, I think I shared with you. I after I'd gotten my successful year of 2018, in 2019, I joined a high dollar mastermind. You had to be making, I think it was over $250,000 to even be considered. And so I got in, and this coach, he has programs. He has the mastermind, he does a group coaching, and then he has just a more traditional course program, but he has a live event. And so we're at the live event, and he had some of us mastermind people at some point on a stage for Q&A where I think it was maybe the coaching people and some other people were able to ask us questions. And one of the people said, like, what is it that makes you guys so successful? And my answer was, we keep taking shots. Literally, that was my answer. I was like, and I give everybody on the stage permission to talk about all the dumb ideas I've talked about in our mastermind, because I've had a lot of stupid ideas that were, very bad that did not work out. But you know what? Nobody remembers those
Yep.
because I kept taking shots. I kept getting up. I got knocked over. Things didn't work out. I said, okay, I learned a lesson. Let me try the next thing.
Yeah.
And I tried things. I got into action and I acted quickly, put things out there. And when I kind of got a thread on something that worked, I said, I like to say I'm like Pavlov's dogs. I'm very trainable. Something starts working. I'm like, I'm going to keep going, keep going, keep going. And, I'm going to invest more time, more effort into that. And I did, but it's because we just kept taking shots. And that's the only way you're going to be successful. I mean, look, there are some random people who first thing they do works. Most of us don't.
Right.
Most of us, have a lot of failures along the way. And, don't do, I like to say, don't do a Bobby like I did. Let that first year go all in, spend multiple tens of thousands of dollars before you made it. Don't do that. That was dumb of me. Luckily, I had resources because I'm a lawyer. So I was able to kind of, come back from that.
Yeah.
I didn't let that initial failure stop me either.
Yes.
So
That's so powerful. That this talk that we just had was powerful, and your conversation even the more reiterated to me how important it is just for me to keep going, for me to minimum keep going with the podcast. Some days I just am like, I don't feel like it today. But then when I meet amazing people just like yourself, it's always some level of confirmation for me. And I know if it's confirmation for me, then somebody listening to the podcast, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will have that confirmation within themselves as well that we are the one percenters in the confidence. We are the one percenters because simply because we take the lesson and take the shot. We're not taking shots blindly. We are taking the lesson. That's the reason why that's the first part of the podcast episode. We're using our experiences. We're not getting to the point where we take the shot. And even if we miss the shot that time, feel like failures because we're able to re-reference back on our times where we did take some shots and we won. And also reflect back on the times where we took the shots and able to say, maybe I shouldn't go about it that way this time.
yeah, and again, those are the important things to figure out and to iterate and to change things. And there's a lot of things I'm not good at, and I've learned those things along the way. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do those anymore. But I found the things I am good at and that do suit me. And since I started this business, since I've gone down this path, I've gotten myself an MBA, which I never thought I would do that. I'm currently getting a master's in software engineering because my business is now software based. So I'm like, well, I should learn this. And that's the way I work. That's the way that my brain works is I like to go deep and learn these things and build knowledge. And, if you would have asked me 5 years, 7 years ago or 8 years ago before all this started, I would have like a master's, a business degree and a software. That's funny. But, that's where I am now. And I wouldn't trade it for the world.
That is so wonderful. I'm so proud of you. Pre-congratulations in advance for your master's because I already know you're going to take that. You're going to take those lessons, and with that, you're going to take even more shots. So,
Yeah.
Bobby, let the people know how can they take the next step with you? Where can they find you?
So look, if you are a business owner who is running what I call a knowledge brand, so course creator, coaches, anything in that where you're selling information, knowledge, your services, et cetera, that's who I help. I currently do it. My company is Plainly Legal. I over the years have done a lot of different options, but essentially now we have a software solution that helps you create the agreements you need, understand the legal things you need to deal with in the first place, and also get answers to your legal questions. That's the best way to do it. You can go over there, plainlylegal.com, and get all the information you need about me. I would give you my social handles, but quite honestly, I'm not all that active on social. I listen more than I talk at this point, but you can always reach me through Plainly. And if you want to start a conversation, I'm always happy to chat with people.
This is so wonderful. And I want to tell you, thank you for taking the time to reach out, taking the time to see that we would have mutual understanding and value. And I'm so honored to have you on my podcast because you've, again, enlightened me to so many different perspectives. And I'm looking forward to our business relationship to continue to grow and for me to be able to stay connected, to continue to learn more knowledge from you.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited, and thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
Yes, you're very welcome. So, listeners, we've already given you the inspiration that you need. And as one of my amazing, beautiful friends, Sonia, always says, now it's time for you to put in the perspiration. So, you can put in that work. You can go find Bobby and you can listen to more podcast episodes from me. And until next time, listeners, we'll see you guys later.